Board meeting of USD 230 to order. Rachel, please collect the roll.
Mrs. Milius? Here. Mrs. Sealing? Here. Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Mr. Updike?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell? Here. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Moving on to approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Jinx. Oh, yeah, cool.
It's moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any comments or questions? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Milius? Yes. Approved.
Very good. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Welcome. Thank you for coming in, everyone, this evening. At this point, we'd like to just do a quick review of our mission, our vision and mission statement here at USD 230. Our vision statement is to maintain small town values and empower each student to achieve world-class success. That tells us what we need to do, what our vision is. The mission is to be a school district that engages students to learn, create, adapt, and succeed in an ever-changing world. That's really how we accomplish things. And so it's important that we keep that fresh in our mind as we work through our agenda this evening. So with that, moving on to good news, recognitions, and announcements. Dr. Luttrell.
Thank you. Yes, we have good news, recognitions, and announcements. Our first group that I'm going to recognize as far as the work that they do and have done positive work throughout our community for many years, even prior to my arrival. And one of the first board meetings I came to last year before I even started was the volunteer club being present and talking about the many ways of service that they engage in to give back to our USD 230 community. And the individuals also that lead this organization and have been at it for many years. I actually admire both very much. I went to a presentation. I guess they kind of do a mid-year presentation with their parents and other ones around December and do a highlight of first semester. And I was able to attend a portion of that. But their two sponsors there are very much integral because they believe also in the importance of instilling that community service and giving back attitude to our students. That's Mrs. Carrie Rodden as well as Mrs. Emily Veer. So at this time, I'm going to, if they would, to please ask the volunteer club and their sponsors to step forward. And I believe that we're going to kind of proceed with they're going to take a few moments and talk about, read some excerpts from their work this year. And then I think they're going to follow that up also with another outstanding video that will kind of highlight to us their work. And then at the end, they will allow an opportunity for there to be questions. So I'm going to turn it over to the volunteer club. And if you would, I don't know how you're going to we do want to make sure by the end, every one of you gets formally introduced, but thank you. Mm-hmm. Take it away.
My name is Jared Reyes and I'm a senior.
Taylor Elliott, I'm a senior. I'm Alexis Beckman and I'm a senior.
I'm Delaney Hill and I'm a senior.
I'm Kaylee Taylor and I'm a senior. I'm Kaylee Linus and I'm a senior.
I'm Ernie Garcia and I'm a senior.
I'm Callie Holmes and I'm a junior.
I'm Regan Goodlow and I'm a junior.
I'm Lauren Reinhardt and I'm a junior.
I'm Madeline O'Brien and I'm a junior.
I'm Anna LaPlante and I'm a junior.
Welcome. My name is Madeline Baxter and I'm a senior in the volunteer class. Thank you for letting us present today. My classmates and I wanted to give you a chance to hear about what the volunteer class has been up to this school year.
We've had a very busy year. Before we share with you about the semester projects, we'd like to briefly tell you about the volunteer program and why the volunteer program was initiated. This program started back in 1997 with an aim to build a better community and to increase the civic responsibility of its students.
Since 1997, Spring Hill High School volunteer students have successfully completed over 250 service projects in the Spring Hill community. This breaks down to over 14,000 hours of service learning work done by Spring Hill students.
This year alone, we've had over 100 different students attend at least one service project, and as a club, volunteered at or with 13 different facilities in the Spring Hill community or the KC Metro.
The purpose of the program is to connect students with the community, give students a purpose, and practice empathy and compassion for others.
In addition to the service projects we organize, every week we make visits throughout the community to different places where we help out with what is needed. This includes several of our district's elementary schools, as well as visits to our adopted grandparents.
We have put together a video that gives you a glimpse of all of our projects as well as our daily activities in the volunteer club.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Bryce.
We are senior members of the volunteer club, and we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. This video will show you all that we have been up to this spring semester.
In the video, you will hear about volunteer projects that were planned and led by the club, as well as some extra activities that we got to be a part of each week, such as adopted grandparents and elementary schools.
Hi, we are the project Giving the Basics. My name is Alexis Beckman.
I'm Bryce Kirkler.
And I'm Olivia Gott.
Giving the Basics is an organization that's mission is to provide hygiene products for those in need. At this project, we were able to take 25 of our own students to the facility. We started off by watching a video about the purpose of the organization. This helped our team to gain perspective going into volunteering.
Then we were given a tour of the facility. The facility was very nicely organized and clean. We split up into 4 groups doing different assembly lines of packing hygiene products into boxes, labeling them. Some of the products were briefs, soap, wipes, pads, and tampons, and more. So we had this project, and we have had a positive experience in the past with the organization, and we were excited to go back. Hygiene is something we all take for granted, and it was eye-opening.
Giving the Basics was an awesome opportunity that allowed us to help others. This project meant a lot to our community because by packaging these hygiene products to be distributed, we were able to help so many people have dignity and things that everyone deserves.
On February 8th, the Volunteer Club held a project at Colonial Oaks Assisted Living Home in Spring Hill, Kansas. At this project, our volunteers did coloring pages, handed out cookies and Capri Suns, and painted the residents' nails. It was a wonderful time, and all of the residents were overjoyed to see us.
The residents, despite having a wonderful staff, experience loneliness daily. Valentine's Day especially can be extremely lonely because a lot of them do not have many friends or family that can come to visit. Having visitors, let alone 20, can make their day. The happiness the residents feel when we came by to talk to them and hang out with them made us volunteers happy too.
Visiting the Assisted Living Center was extremely fulfilling for everyone who participated. Volunteers are always satisfied with helping others and seeing how far a simple conversation can go. The residents were asking us to come back because they loved us so much. Overall, everyone was super happy after our trip and our spirits were lifted.
Our project was in collaboration with Pete's Garden. Our culinary classes prepared meals, and over the span of 2 days, we packaged 150 meals and then delivered them to members in our community who had signed up to receive a free meal.
Why did we choose this project? We chose this project because Pete's Garden's main goal is to bring back family mealtime, and we wanted families in our community to experience that too. They are free and high quality meals for families of 4, and so it was a good experience for people with food insecurity to be able to get a free meal without having to worry about making a meal next time.
This was important for Spring Hill High School because it directly impacted the community that we live in. The meals that we packaged and handed out were given directly to the community, giving students the opportunity to see the change firsthand.
At Mission Southside, we were broken up into several different groups where we were assigned different tasks. One group helped count, fill, and reorganize Easter eggs into boxes. When all of us were done with our tasks, the groups went to the Christmas store. This was a shed where we helped organize toys and gifts by distributing them into different age groups.
We did this project because it directly impacted the community around us. By volunteering at Mission Southside, we were able to provide an Easter egg hunt for families who do not usually have the resources to do it.
This project impacted me because I was able to be a part of something that was bigger than myself. I gained a new perspective on the importance of giving back to my community.
Hi, we're Maddie,
Reagan.
and Callie, and we worked on a project for Veterans Community Project. VCP is a nonprofit organization that fights veteran homelessness in Kansas City area.
The organization helps veterans struggling to acclimate back into civilian life and breaking the cycle of homelessness. They are most known for their village of 49 tiny homes that give veterans a temporary home as they get back on their feet.
We toured their facility and helped them package donated food to give to in-need veterans. Volunteer Club was happy to assist our local veterans and give back to the community in ways that matter.
On Mondays and Fridays, the volunteer students are assigned to elementary schools in the Spring Hill district. At these schools, our students help teachers out with any tasks needed and interact with the students in their classrooms. This may include helping with assignments, playing games, reading books, and more.
We go to the elementary schools, help with the teacher, hang out, and bring some joy to the kids. The volunteer students love it, and many note it as the highlight of their week.
Visiting elementary schools impacts the students beyond measure. Many of the volunteer students have made connections with the kids, and the kids are always happy to see the volunteers. For example, one of the kids is a football player, and every Friday when he would wear his jersey, they would be very excited to see him.
On Thursday each week, volunteer students visit grandparents around their community. Our adopted grandparents are elderly Spring Hill residents who would like some help, entertainment, or plain company. Most groups go to individual grandparents, and mine goes to the Assisted Living Center Golden Living.
We love going to our adopted grandparents every week. Seniors in our community aren't offered a lot of help, so it is important that Spring Hill High School students offer as much help to them as possible, whether it be cleaning up a room, picking up weeds, talking about their day, or even eating snacks with each other. Going to grandparents helps both students and their grandparents.
I've had the joy of going to Sherry Mitchell's house with a few others. Her and her son Johnny are so fun to be around, and I really look forward to seeing them each week. She always makes us feel special and celebrates our birthdays by planning us a party.
Overall, we managed to successfully complete many different projects in our community this semester. We were able to see the positive impacts that our involvement has on those we helped.
These projects are a fun and meaningful experience for everyone involved, and we look forward to the years to come. Thank you for taking the time to see all that we have done this year.
As you can see, the students of the volunteer class and members of the volunteer club are very busy working to do as much as we can to help fulfill the mission of the class. We'd like to encourage you to volunteer because the difference that even a single person can make is immeasurable. Thank you for taking your time to hear about our organization and inviting us today. Are there any questions?
First, I think you deserve a standing ovation, quite frankly. Well done. Excellent job. That video was fantastic and very informative, and I appreciate everyone putting that together. I know it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to pull those things together and have it be clear and not too long, but it provide the information. I had a couple questions and comments and or commentary on just what you're doing in the volunteer club. It's always exciting for me personally to see you come in, because I think it instills this sense. And you mentioned it. I didn't catch your name when you introduced yourself, but you said in the video, it's about being a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think something to come home with or take home with, or the message that you'll carry on as you move forward, as all the seniors move forward into next year, whatever that brings, and juniors become seniors, is that every conversation that you have with an individual has an impact on them and it has an impact on you. You may never see the outcome of that conversation, but just know that it's going to be, there will be a positive or a negative impact depending on how the conversation went, right? Sometimes we get upset. A lot of times we're really happy and that communicates to them. But just know that you have an impact, not just on our community, but everyone that you've interacted with, places that you've gone outside of our community, you spread that sense of well-being, that pride in being something larger than yourself to those communities as well. And so it's just remarkable all that you've done. I saw you had 100 students involved. How big is the volunteer club?
Volunteer club is really anybody who volunteers.
Yeah, okay.
So around 100.
Okay.
Give or take. We have some students that one project, some that go multiple, but there are 15 students in the class.
See, that was the point I was going to get to, is you have 15 people and you've leveraged 15 people into 100 helping volunteers. And if each person impacts 3 people, now we're at 300 people. So you have 15 people that have impacted those 300 and it's exponential after that. And so, I mean, conceivably, you can have an impact on the entire Kansas City area. You can have an impact on the entire state of Kansas. You can have an impact on the entire Midwest just because of what you're doing in this 15-person class. And I mean, our sponsors, you've done an amazing job of keeping folks. I think they probably do a lot of it themselves, but starting out with that guidance and a direction, it takes a lot of insight and courage to step out and do what you're doing. So you should feel very good about what you've accomplished. The other, let's see if I had any other, the 100 folks, I didn't realize it had been around since 1997. You've had 14,000 hours of impact since its inception. What a tremendous accomplishment. And do you average about 15 students a year?
It just depends. They do have to apply
Uh-huh.
for a certain amount of projects and be in good academic standing. But last year we had 22 students in the class.
Okay.
And next year we'll have around 18.
Very good.
Roughly between 15 to 20. 22 was a
Okay.
lot, but
Yeah. Very good. Outstanding. Tremendous accomplishments. Very well done. Any other comments?
I just had a quick comment. We finished up our community leadership program a couple weeks ago, and our final day, we brought in some community volunteer groups and let them interact with the leadership class. And one of the people does a lot with the Fall Festival, a lot with the Rurittans, just probably one of the most engaged community members, said he got his start with the Spring Hill Volunteer Club. So I think it's neat to see it come back into the community later. And I don't know, he's probably maybe a 2006 or 7 graduate. So thank you for what you do, because it is good for wherever you guys end up to have that experience take with you.
You guys are a fantastic group. The adoptive grandparent thing, that's my favorite part. So thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or questions for the volunteer club?
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you to the sponsors as well. Okay.
How many hours of time do you individually put into it, say over a semester or a year? However, do you track that? Any thoughts?
like the teachers or?
Well, the teachers and the students,
Well, we
planning, all that.
the math with the students, and they do over 200 hours a year being in the class between the planning and the projects and then the outside projects. And, you know, and then just the group work and such. So it is a lot, and they are responsible for the recruiting of the volunteers. So we put a lot of responsibility on them to go out and recruit, and that's fun.
That will serve you well in leadership positions, which you are a group of leaders. So very good. Thank you. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you. And then we also We also have, on recognition tonight, we do have the Superintendent Student Advisory Council that meets, throughout, the year. This year, we were only able to meet 3 times. Part of that was because, again, I was new in the past. I think the last couple of years when they were formed, they met a little bit more regular, and we decided to kind of, again, sit down this summer and work with the principals and trying to maybe restructure some of the formatting and see what some of the more targeted role might be, and as well as not only in selection, but also maybe having them more involved in attendance at, perhaps some of our Board of Education functions, just so that they're there to give input. But we do have 2 members from that, just one. I knew she, but the ones that were able to come tonight, I do have one member, and she will come over and kind of tell you a little bit about her experience. But before she does, I do say that, we did each meeting, we had about an hour and 15 minutes, and we would try to talk about different topics that were either relevant at the time or on the horizon as we looked into, the upcoming 23, 24, 24, 25 school year. And some of the topics that we did, get input from or had presentations to them on had to do, it ranged from topics such as, our new student mobile devices that we're transitioning into for fall of 23. We got some input from them about how they felt about PLCs and if we would transition into that late start Wednesdays for everyone, and starting an hour late. We talked a bit about tiered busing. We filled them in on the graduation requirements, and then also addressed, which I'd already heard from them as part of the listen learn, about a need to possibly transition into, and do some structuring with weighted grades and classes and recognitions. And then, as I said, towards the end, we talked a bit about what we could maybe enhance the role and what it might look like in the future. But I'm going to let one of the members introduce herself to you, and she can kind of give you her perspective, because I think she may have even been involved, in prior years. But go ahead.
Yes, I'm Delaney Hill. I'm a senior at the high school, obviously. I this year ran for senior class president, and this was like my first official leadership role at the high school. And with that, I was invited onto the superintendent advisory committee for the first year. But I knew last year, Coral Callan and I were really good friends, and she was on the board. And so I kind of lived vicariously through her last year and got to learn about it as well. At the beginning of the year, when Dr. Luttrell came around and had his meetings, me and some of my friends who are also on the leadership at the high school were talking to him, and our biggest concern was weighted grades and new AP classes and advancing the minds of Spring Hill and how we could do that. And so with that, we asked for more graduation requirements and to increase the different AP classes and courses that are related to college. Because I know that has been a big impact to me and my friends, being higher achieving, especially since middle school, and not having as many opportunities as other school districts. And so that was a big concern, especially with weighted GPAs. I know I have lost out on a couple of scholarships because we don't have weighted GPAs right now, and that could have benefited me in the long run. We also talked about the 2-tiered busing and how that would also benefit the school. And it is hard for me to look at that because of the different ages. Because I know when I was in middle school, I bused, and if my younger brother would have bused, we would just bust at different times. And so that would be hard for single family, single parent homes and stuff like that. But I didn't know how that would work. We hadn't really talked too in depth about it. I don't know, anything else you have questions about so far?
You did great. Like I said, because one thing that we always try to do when we talk with the students about a particular topic, we try to present them both, why it would be positive, but also, as she said, we also try to point out, but also if we were to do this, here are some dominoes that are going to result from the other side that we got to think about, and how to balance, a lot of decisions, with different things. So,
yeah.
But and then, like I said, at the end, they did give me some good insight as to, as we move forward into the future, about ways we can enhance, both the membership, because it has been selective. It's not selective, but selected from, the buildings. And we've talked about maybe this summer, like I said, trying to get some input and seeing if maybe we can still follow that format, but maybe have a couple slots that might be wide open for students to maybe make an application that they would have to maybe answer some questions, be interviewed, and then maybe a panel would select a couple members from that to make sure that we do get a true diverse group that will definitely give us good input on a variety of topics. So thank you, Delaney.
Yeah. Any questions for me?
What are your thoughts on how we could improve this committee and integrate with the board?
Like the Board of Education?
Yeah.
Include more students
Include
and
more
student voices. I think it's hard, especially during COVID. It was hard to like sit there and watch you guys talk, and like there was people who came in here and like got to speak to you guys, but like you didn't like get to hear the impact it was on the students. And like if you had more students come and talk in front of you, like myself right now, like there's so many ideas out there like that we could share that like especially Dr. Luttrell, when he came in and he had all the meetings, like he wouldn't have known all of that, like all of our frustrations he like got in those meetings, and that was a huge thing.
Good. Broader voice.
Yeah. The voice from the boots on the ground. Yeah. I like there's definitely a conversation to be had about a weighted GPA. That's something.
Yeah.
Glad you brought that up.
Thank you, Delaney. I'm glad you were able to come.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate you coming in.
And then our final recognition, good news announcements this evening. We have our monthly video, and we have where we profile a brief what's going on at one of our schools. And we actually tonight have what's going well at Forest Spring Middle School. That's not even open yet. It's open August, but there's daily things happening every day out there. So we're going to take a look at Forest Spring Middle School.
All right, what's going well here at Forest Spring? Well, we have our staff hired. We've got them coming in for tours of the building and seeing where they're going to call home or what they're going to call home next year, and very excited about that. Excited to bring students in and families in coming this summer to get to see this beautiful, beautiful school.
We're getting ready for athletics and hiring our coaches. And so we're just going to encourage all the kids to try out and participate in our teams.
We're just finished the furniture up this week. Almost every bit of furniture's in, but no, we're on time, on budget. We'll be ready to roll come August with the new kids coming in.
I think that I'm most excited about just getting to build a whole new culture and taking the positive experience that I've had at Spring Hill Middle School and building something that is part of the Spring Hill School District mission and spirit, but making it our own here at Forest Spring. So I just can't wait to be a Charger.
All right, super excited about new Forest Springs next year. It'll be my second year in the district. Love the district, love the direction that we're going, and I can't wait to have kids come flooding in here and get some learning done.
So I am super excited. I got to see my new classroom today. Got to see all the new desks, my new desk, all the new lockers and everything in our pod. See who my next door neighbors will be, other teachers. And I'm just really, really excited for next year to meet all the kids that I'll get to have and teach in this brand new environment where everything just feels so exciting and new right now.
We're super excited. I'm pumped to have a new school, new things. Just looking at my classroom for the first time. I love the setup, the desks. I'm really excited to go to a new school and trade in my yellow for green and be a Charger. It's going to be a great year at a great school next year. We're sure pumped and bolt up. Go Chargers.
And that's my good news, recognitions, and announcements.
A lot of good things going on. Moving on to public participation.
No cards were presented.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the consent agenda items, approval of the minutes of the April 24th, 2023 meeting, personnel, Skyward annual renewal, Microsoft renewal, Lindenwood road sharing agreement, recommendation from health professionals regarding Narcan, student handbook changes for 23-24 school year, and approval of the sick leave buyback. Any questions or discussion or comments?
Yes, I still have questions on the handbook. How do we pull that out of the consent agenda? Can we discuss that?
On the what?
The student handbook changes.
Student handbook changes. We need to make a motion to modify the agenda. To add the to remove the student handbook changes from the consent agenda and then have a second motion to add that to the agenda, to the discussion item.
Okay.
What discussion or action? Or action item?
Discussion.
Well, action item actually would go to action item, not discussion item.
Okay. So, Mr. President, I move that we pull the student handbook changes for 23-24 school year number 708 from the consent agenda and place it on separately on the agenda.
Second.
It's moved and second to remove the student handbook changes for the 23-24 school year from the consent agenda.
To vote on it.
Any discussion or comment? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Milius? Yes. Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Assume there's a motion to add it to the action item.
Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Are you waiting on me?
So we do need a motion
So we need a motion again.
to add it to the as action item 8.02.
Okay, Mr. President, I motion to add the student handbook changes for 23-24 school year to an action item.
Second.
Moving and seconded to add student handbook changes for the 23-24 school year as action item 8.02. Any comments or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Milius? Yes. Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Approved.
Okay, back to consent agenda, which as it was presented before minus the handbook changes. Any questions or discussion or comment on?
I just had one comment on the Lindenwood road sharing agreement. Obviously, it's very early in the process and that estimate we got is very rough right now. I just wanted to call out that's will likely be moving around at some point once we get a little closer to the dates of the actual happening and not to bank on that number we got.
Okay, thank you, Nels. Any other comments or discussion?
The only other discussion or comment, if they happen to be listening to our school nurses, I just wanted to say thank you again for bringing that to our attention about adding Narcan and just the safety that brings to the buildings. So.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Mr. President, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved and seconded for approval of the consent agenda as amended. Any final discussion or comment? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Milius? Yes. Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to action items. Action item 8.01 is board meeting schedule for 22-23. We had a discussion at our last meeting. I think there's a couple different versions out there. One is 21 meetings and 23-24 school year, and the option is 19 meetings. So there's 2 meetings difference. It's what that does is what reduces July meetings from 2 to 1 and November meetings from 2 to 1 is the only change.
I really wasn't comfortable with the 17 meetings from 21 to 17. I thought that was a pretty big jump. However, the 19 with just the July meeting, and then, the November meeting is, I think, the Monday after Thanksgiving. So that's probably going to be a fairly rough day to have a meeting to begin with. And then the July's pretty, at least this year, we don't have a lot of things going on in July. Last year, we had a new superintendent in July, so it was pretty busy.
Yep.
So I would be comfortable with the 19.
Yeah, I think it seems reasonable and.
Yeah.
I couldn't find where our board work calendar is housed any longer. It used to be on every agenda, but it's not there anymore.
It's not in use anymore
Oh,
because Dr. Luttrell has moved things down to Horizon.
gotcha. So what typically, maybe I should go down there, Horizon. What typically would we hit in July and November that we will condense to one meeting?
I mean, you can't really answer that from a standpoint of, especially in November, because you never know really what you're gonna be working on. I know that this next fall is we haven't got next year's agenda fully planned out yet, but some of the main items that I've told you about that we're gonna be talking about next year that have to be answered by December or early January is gonna be the whole, if we transition to weighted grades or the law day system. So that would be something that would be in and would probably be a big item that's gonna be placed. We want to have ready and around in that November, December, early January timeframe. The other said, because it's items that typically that I look at as truly items on the agenda that for the first time that are going to be take time, or items that really there's never been too much discussion about prior. Every year, I know we have milk bids. Every year, I know we have to do academic fees. I know we have to do driver's education fees, but to me, those are not items that typically are just gonna need lots and lots of time or discussion. It's those other items that are initially, we do plan this next school year. I plan on this next to have at least every other month, if not quarterly, more in-depth discussion, formatting of our strategic plan updates. Okay, now how we pencil those in, still remains to be seen, but I really, again, do not foresee that, that the November meeting nor the July meeting, eliminating those is going to present too much of a challenge. The July meeting is, of course, the one that you do have the reorganization. You do basically you designate the different people to do different roles.
That's the first.
January.
That's the first meeting in July.
And so
The second meeting in July normally was our budget workshop. And if I'm speaking wrong, Doug, you can correct me, but everything's shifted back.
Yeah,
on
it's
the
all
budget.
slipped back.
So we really have extra time in July because we're not taking up that budget workshop. So if we slide the organizational from that first meeting in July to the bottom meeting in July, then that also gives everybody a little more chance to take off and have vacation with your families.
It looks like to me, looking at last year's July, that the first meeting in July was very light. Like there was only a couple of things on the agenda besides our regular things that we do. And then the last meeting had discussion items of the Spring Hill Sports Live contract and the Insight School of Kansas contract. But besides that, it was all the other things. And then it had Dr. Luttrell's first 100-day plan. And we had a session with the Kansas Association of School Boards to talk about transitioning as a superintendent. So both of those meetings, looking forward, seem like they would be pretty light agendas for July, just the July ones.
So Candy, I think that you said, clarify if I'm wrong, that instead of having the board list that we had, or like what's coming up in the meeting, because I think I don't want to speak for anybody else. I used that as kind of a checklist, and I knew what was coming up when, and that has been moved to on the horizon, but I don't see that.
No, it actually hasn't been. Because Dr. Luttrell is building your agenda under that horizon, we really have not put it underneath there because we're not following that. However, your clerk is following it. So we're still watching for those things that need to be on the agenda.
So I would still really appreciate knowing that list. There are times that if I hear from a parent or somebody, like when
And I would look forward. We talk about that in July. I'm just using that as an example. So to not really have an idea of when things are coming up or what's going on. And not that I don't trust our board clerk. I think you're doing a fantastic job, by the way. I think you're probably, but that checklist is a nice checklist, mental checklist, so we know when it's coming up too. So
would one meeting a month for that calendar to be on be sufficient? Or do you want it on both meetings per month?
I think it'd be helpful just to have it on the library.
yeah.
Just so we know what's
I just need to be, it just needs to be accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, just so you know that the budget hearing's in this month and that this is in this month and we elect, you know, officers in January. I think it would be helpful. It would be helpful to me to have that in the library. But I don't think we have to have it on the agenda necessarily.
As long as we can reference it, that's all that I really am looking for. And I really did reference it more than I think I realized before. The other thing that I was curious about, and maybe that would have, as we've been talking about how many meetings to have, I think that's somewhere where the unrest comes from. Like, wait, what? I don't know if we can reduce meetings. I don't know when things are happening. I think that might be some of my concern with it. And the other thing, have we done away with the board list then too? Like for us to add our,
That's the horizon.
That's the horizon.
Right.
but it's not on the agenda.
It's on the agenda of, it's the
Horizon piece, like I said, was kind of a combination of items, both that came from a list as well as future items. I have gotten into the habit where I said I pretty much did that, have been putting that on there on the Horizon piece. Usually usually once each month. I know it was on the last meeting that we had. I think it was in the second meeting in April, but like I said, I pulled that out and combined the list with the fact of with the Horizon. I just thought that was a better fit. I know that again, some of the again, right or wrong, some feedback that I had gotten along the listen and learn to people is that they just felt there is some connotation having it the way it was worded in terms of just being called the list. It kind of sent to some people a connotation that it, you know, if you were if an item was on the list, it was something bad, or it was there for, you know, somebody was doing something wrong. And I just tried to combine that into on the Horizon to know that, hey, this is a topic that may come up with that. And I have, but I did try very much to include keep on the Horizon. And I think most throughout this year, we have the items that had been on that, you know, have been worked into an agenda topic.
So that the plan is, you're saying just once a month to have that on there, and that's when we can bring up topics that we would like to have discussed.
Yeah, and if there ever, like I said, if there ever is an item that any of you, you know, would like to maybe, hey, why don't we, you know, you can definitely, you know, talk to me, and I can, whenever we add that to the draft list of whenever I meet with the board leadership and we start planning agenda items, and can throw that out and say, hey, here's something that has been brought to me, and they can definitely, you know, give the green light to do that. Or I can, you know, may even reach out to a particular board and say, hey, tell me more of what you'd like to see on this. Make sure we get you the right information.
I think obviously this is our only place to talk openly about with all of us about certain topics. So I think it's important.
Sure.
So I just want, do you think with one meeting in July, that will be enough time to discuss anything or anything related to opening schools we'll have on June's agenda? I think that's my worry, is that it being so close to the start of school, that we won't have those two meetings to discuss and then vote. It will just kind of all be pushed into one. Could we just make sure anything that we related to or needed to be done before the beginning of the school be presented in June?
Yes, and that's one reason why I did leave. Even now, much contradict myself. I think even on the original schedule, when I gave the three choices, where I went from 21 to 17 down to 12, even on the 17 one, I'm pretty sure that I still had. I've always kept two meetings in June because there's a lot that goes on we're finishing up, we get test data back. We're also starting to, know our hiring, where we're at. And plus with the fact that we're opening up, a new school, we will have that in July. And because of the fact that that meeting that I have penciled in for July, if we go to one, is towards the end of July, that third week, we will have as much information as we can. And then the other thing to keep in mind, although I do not want to do this, but if there were a need, any month or any time, even if you're having 2 meetings a month, if there's ever a need where we need to have a meeting to get something done, or we can always call we're not locked into the calendar, so we can't meet outside of that.
Special meetings, if they're necessary, we can call them special meetings.
Well, we do still have the 4 work scheduled meetings in there too, so that
Correct.
I'm comfortable with the 19 because
The 19 goes to 3, right? 3 work sessions.
Yes,
where
so the
21
19 doesn't have that possible work session on the 31st. It just has 3, which it would be just the week right after the last meeting.
Oh, I see.
So, but I guess it would be an opportunity to schedule a special meeting.
No, and I do have, that's because that's one thing, again, I've learned a lot as well this year. And one thing that I know we probably, have not done, and I'll put that on me, is we haven't really done the 5th Monday work sessions, because again, there was just other things going on, and I want to make sure that I knew if I called a 5th, that what we need to talk about. But I do think that this next year, I'm well enough know now what needs to be done. And I've already talked about, I look to probably use a couple of our 5th Monday meetings next year. I think that would be a great time if we wanted to go more in depth with our strategic plan and get report outs from how our buildings are doing in terms of maybe one part of one of our 5th Monday sessions could be where we maybe have the elementary principals come in and share their specific school improvement plans of how they're aligning and what they're wanting to accomplish, what they're doing to help us accomplish our goals at the district level. Another 5th maybe bring the middle and the secondary in. So there's a lot, and then we also, as I've said before, I've talked to Phil and Tim and them about it, and Josh, we 20, there's on the books right now, a possible ballot measure that we know we may have to go for a bond in 25, even with our enrollment kind of not slowing, but it's leveled off some, but we're still increasing. And 25 will be here before we know it. So I know we're going to have some detailed in-depth discussions this next fiscal year, as well as we look to determine if we're going to go in 25, what's that going to look like? Because then we need to gear up and make sure that we get people in place to have our committees in that role. And so we're ready to go. So it's going to be a lot. Like I said, I feel much better, much more aware heading into this fiscal school year in July 1.
Yeah, we might really need some of those additional work days if we're going to have a bond in 24 and build in 25. And that's
bond in 25, I think.
Bond in 20. I thought you just said build in 25.
No, 25. We'd have to start. We would need to start.
But we'd have to start talking about it in 24 and get it on the ballot. There's a lot of planning. So yes, that's next year.
So 1921, what are the thoughts on that? It is an action item.
Yeah, I'd be content with 19, and if we have to have a meeting, we add a meeting.
Can always add a special meeting.
Yeah. Whenever it's necessary.
And that would be draft 2A.
2B. It is an action item.
So the draft that I have printed out from our Friday board packet review says draft 2B, but you were saying it's draft 2A?
That's what I have in my notes, but let me look here.
I just want to make sure I'm moving for the right thing.
I believe it's 2B.
I think
2B.
the motion would be for 19 regular meetings plus 3 additional.
Okay.
Potential.
Mr. President, I move we adopt a board meeting schedule for 23-24, including 19 regular meetings plus 3 potential work sessions.
That'd be correct.
I second the motion.
Moved and seconded to change our Board of Education meeting schedule or adopt the Board of Education meeting schedule for 19 regular meetings plus 3 potential work sessions in 2023-2024 school year. Any final comments or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius, yes. Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to action item 8.02.
If board members refresh their computers, your clerk has moved 802 to action.
Okay.
Let me refresh.
Action item 8.02, student handbook changes for the 23-24 school year. Comments and discussion.
Okay, I can start since I requested this. I'm thankful that Mr. Williams is here. Maybe we could get his input too. I always appreciate his input. And then, of course, Dr. Villarreal, and I know you've worked hard on this, so I want to say thank you first. I know I really do. I want to start with positive. I do really appreciate the streamlining of the handbooks. I mean, before we had so many in, so I think that's really helpful. I just am wanting some clarification. I am struggling still with the attendance and enrollment policy change. And as I looked through it a little bit more, and I've read it multiple times, I don't even know how many times at this point. I think that my concern is the school ever deciding when an absence is excused or unexcused instead of the parent. I think parents should be able to decide when their student is excused or unexcused. I mean, there's a truancy policy, you know, even on the Johnson County District Attorney's website that talks about truancy. So I'm concerned about that. I feel, unless I'm misunderstanding it, which is why I wanted to bring it up again, I just am really struggling with parents not having the ability. And I realized last time it was stated that it's to hope to deter vacations during school. I just don't think that that's our decision. I mean, one family in particular, I have 2 different examples, military family. He was only on leave for a certain time. If they want to go on vacation in September, because that's when the dad can go, then I don't think we say anything about that. Another situation, there could be somebody that has issues that aren't always that they're going to the doctor for. Mental health issues, things like that, that the mom or the parent knows this child needs to not be at school today. I don't know when it's the school. I don't know how it's the school's decision to say that's not an excused absence. I'm just struggling with it. Go ahead. I always want to hear it.
I appreciate it, and I'm sorry to jump in here, but maybe I can answer some of those questions or clarify a little bit, because this was a rather lengthy discussion throughout the school year for that. Actually, our current policy is pretty strict. If you notice, it has to have a parent communicate with the administrator for approval with some of this stuff. And then if for like a doctor's appointment, you have to bring in a doctor's note for it to be an excused absence. So this actually gives a little bit more freedom on the parent. It doesn't seem like it, Ally, and I can see your concerns, but we're giving them a little bit more freedom that they have 5 of them that they can verify that this is absence. It's going to be one of those, once it gets to too long, an administrator is going to communicate, and we hope to get that working relationship with the administrator, so then we can have that constant conversation to know what's really taking place, to see what we need to do to assist. What we know is we need to have kids in school for them to progress academic and everything else with that. I think we have some individuals maybe being covered a little bit, saying they just need extra sleep, or that class isn't important, so you can come in at 10 o'clock, and then that's kind of where we're some loopholes with that. So working with this, and actually I talked to quite a bit, I talked to all the league principals to see how they did attendance. Ours was actually the most strict compared to all the other ones, and a lot of them gave them 10 days and then parents excused, and then to move on forward for that. Working with the new administration team that came from previous schools, we were able to pull information from theirs to take a look at. And so, yeah, I see your point. Nobody knows their kids better than a parent. It really does. But at some point, we have to have limitations instead of letting a parent excuse a kid 25 times a semester for a reason. And this is actually a little bit more looser than what we previously have in our handbook. Right now, when you look at it, it pretty much says a parent needs to communicate with the administrator if they're sick. Okay, well, most of the time, if a parent calls me, I'm gonna say, yeah, keep them home. You know, that's an excused absence or something like that. So we're willing to work with the parents. I think this just gives us a little bit more of an outline of what to expect for you could excuse 5 per semester. Then we're gonna start working with you on making sure attendance is taking place at school.
Okay.
I don't know if I answer your questions or not
No,
on
I
that stuff.
do want, has it been an issue?
This year, yes. Yes.
More than other years, is that what you mean?
I think we've seen it I think we've seen it coming off of COVID. I think some of our kids have realized I don't need to be at school from 8:05 to 3:15 to be successful. And I hate to say that, and I don't know how I'm saying this on live YouTube. So they can make it to where, well, if I'm only in these 2 classes today, I can make up this other work at home, I'll be fine. So then we have some parents calling in just basically excusing them from school so they can come to 2 classes because those are the 2 most meaningful classes they have to be in attendance for that day.
And then missing the other classes?
Yes.
Is that creating more work for the teachers?
Sure
that
it
an
is,
issue?
because you have to do the makeup work or you have to make sure you have the communication going on with that. Now, I will say our teachers do a great job making sure their stuff's up to date on Google Classroom for kids to access it and parents to know for it. But it always, you never know what can take place in a classroom. There could be a great teachable moment that kid missed out on some other information that wasn't available on the notes on Google Classroom or something else. That's gonna have to be retaught at that moment or when they come back to school. So that was our thinking when we talked about this. This wasn't a rush decision. This was a discussion throughout the whole year. We actually included our individuals that work with us in the office because they're the ones that field the phone calls from parents, quite a bit to see what would help them when talking to parents and some of this stuff. So this actually does give a little bit of say back into parents a little bit on some of the stuff.
I mean, that is a whole, I don't want to open up a whole nother can of worms, but if it's 1 excuse, then it's detention. If it's 2.
Are you looking at the new policy?
Yeah, I think so.
I think SS says after 10 excused absences, we'll start working with them to make sure that they understand the importance of school coming in. We have school consequences for unexcused absences. We've never penalized a kid for excused absences.
Well, so it says first unexcused absence, 1 hour administrative detention.
Yes, that's unexcused. Yeah, that's unexcused. And that's usually when we don't hear from parents at all, when a kid's unexcused, or quite honestly, we have parents that are truthful for us, said, my kid refused to come to school today. There you go,
They're okay with them being held accountable to that.
Yes, yeah, with that.
Yeah, and then second day of unexcused is 1 day in school suspension, third unexcused is 3 days in school suspension. And it goes on. I've always felt like, I don't know what the solution is, but especially OSS, I don't know how.
Well, yeah,
It's some kind of
and I think our rationale with more ISS is because they don't want to be in school, so we're rewarding them with OSS, and so.
Right.
ISS
I've
might
always
be even
wondered how OSS.
worse. Yeah, well, here's the great thing is we have an individual that administers 2 days of the week for us, and she does a fantastic job, and so there's consistency now. We used to have just to hire a sub to go in there, and it didn't work. But with the hiring of Anna coming in and doing that, we have consistency in the ISS room with the expectations.
Okay, so you feel like this policy actually is giving the parents more lenience?
If you look at our previous policy that we're working on right now, a lot of it says a parent has to communicate with the administrator for everything to get approved. So this one does give a little bit more freedom towards a parent.
I think what kept rolling around in my head that I had such issue with is like trying to tell a parent or discourage parents from whatever their family activity might be.
Yeah.
I don't think that as a school district, we should ever.
Right. I would hope that a lot of parents would say once they talk to Mr. Williams or something like that, a lot of things got worked out and there were things excused because of understanding.
Right.
Sometimes it's just a matter of having a conversation with some to understand things.
Okay.
I do have a quick question because I think I just want to see if my memory serves me correctly. When I was on the high school site council, I remember, and it was Mr. Shea talking about, the state does look at your absent
They do.
rate, right? And
They do.
it affects how they look at accreditation and a lot of things. They don't want you to have these high absent,
Yeah.
it's not a good mark on your school. if you
Right,
have
and
high
then
absent
you also understand whether it's an excused or unexcused absence, after so many days on a student, their attendance rate, they're gonna be deemed at risk by the state of Kansas. And so that's one of those things that we always have to keep in mind also too. And that's one of those things when, even after excused absences, we want to start working with the parent to make sure we understand and getting them to school on some of these things. But they do, they look at our attendance rate. It goes on our building report card for everybody in the state of Kansas to see what we have.
So-
Really, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. I was
I
gonna say-
really appreciate you explaining some of the things that are going on, because that's stuff we would never know.
Yeah.
About how that's changed.
The other thing I think that maybe a bigger discussion to have down the road is some of this, the school day. And I mean, COVID did change things.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
think schools are gonna probably look different in
Yeah.
10 years, but there has to be some standards now
Sure.
in
sure.
this.
I'll be retired by then, so. But
I
yeah.
think though that you just kind of reminded me that sometimes, I mean, in my professional life, all I do is data driven decisions. That's all all day long is evaluating data. But maybe sometimes knowing like our absent rate or our call-in rate has gone up by this percentage and then when we're looking at policy and changes and handbook changes, that would be really helpful.
I understand that, yeah. I can see that.
Because I think it would be almost like, oh, well, our absent rate's gone up by 15%. We definitely need
Sure.
to look into this further instead of just understanding the why behind
Yeah.
really helps.
Right.
So could we chat for a little bit about the other items that have been added? Since this was presented to us originally, the deliveries one, are you guys seeing issues with deliveries?
We are. It's amazing. DoorDash knows our school pretty well.
They came all the way.
It is amazing. And I understand Kylie put numbers and stuff like that, but it's amazing when we'll get a call to the school and say, hey, I'm so-and-so with DoorDash. I'm by door 12. Can somebody let me in? Because I'm supposed to meet this student for some food. So we do get quite a bit of deliveries with DoorDash. And I think we are trying to squelch that.
Well, that's a safety thing too.
Yeah.
When they come to the side
Absolutely.
doors and
Absolutely.
And the delivery item was already in the handbooks. We just added specifically restaurant deliveries. Because people were arguing back, well, it doesn't say restaurant deliveries. So now it says specifically restaurant deliveries.
So I should have looked at it a little closer, but maybe I know you know this inside and out now. Is that, and Mark might know too, is parent delivery, food delivery not allowed either? Is that a thing?
We have a thing in our policy, we don't allow outside food into our school with that, and so, but we.
I thought it was, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
Is it in the handbook?
Right, yeah, it is, and then, so we don't allow outside food brought inside the school. Now, if parents bring us lunch for their kid, we let them eat that lunch, there's no doubt about it. We give them a location, so they're not, celebrating that they got Chipotle in front of everybody else while we got French toast sticks or something like that. But so, yeah, but I'll be honest with you, Celine, our biggest issue has probably been DoorDash this year on things.
That's my issue at home too. Like, can we write a policy? No DoorDash for if you're under 18, ever, no matter where you are.
And then the complaints and grievances, is this something that came out of the new legislature? Like, how did it get added after?
This was something that was in a civic audit that was done in the year 2021. So while Dr. Burke and Misty Atchison were here, and that change that was supposed to happen in the handbook was signed off on as having changed, but it never actually got added to the handbooks. So we're just adding what was required by the state for us to have in the handbooks.
And we had just gotten word on that like last week from the Kansas Department of Education. They notified us just last week that.
And just for clarification, the wording that's there is already in board policy. It's just repeated in the handbook now.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I was a little bit surprised under flowers and gifts that you didn't have balloons. Just because there's so many people with latex allergies now, but maybe next year as we're rewriting things again. Yeah, it could be a gift, right? It could fall under gift.
I just had a quick comment on the dress code that it's been relaxed, and I don't envy you guys sorting that out. I mean, it's a pretty sticky wicket. I was listening to the radio last week, and there's a district up in Michigan that's in a big federal lawsuit. A couple kids wore a couple Let's Go Brandon hoodies to school, and they made them take them off, and it's turned into a big mess. So I don't know how you, I mean, that could go any direction. It's on you guys. Good luck. You know, I don't know how you do that.
Any other discussion or comments? This is an action item.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the changes to the student handbooks for 23-24.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the student handbook changes for the 23-24 school year. Any final comments or discussion? Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
approved.
very good. Thank you. Moving on to discussion items is a request from Spring Hill High School band to attend the Alamo Bowl on December 29th, 2023 in San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Luttrell?
Yes, we have representatives from the high school here this evening to present their proposal to request consideration be given to allow them to attend the Alamo Bowl in December of this year. You also have a special treat this evening because you also have to get to have Mr. Williams introduced to you, the individual that will be leading the USD230 Spring Hill bands next school year. So Mr. Williams, we'll let you take it away and introduce your guest.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Usually you guys approve the contracts, but you can't put the name with the face on this, but I'm super excited to have Tristan Bartley here this evening. He reached out to me about our high school band being invited again back to the Alamo Bowl. I think it was previously 3 or 4 years ago for that trip with that. And him not even being on contract, Spring Hill, he's working diligently, getting prepared for next year. And he wanted to come in front of the board to visit with you about the trip. So I'm going to turn it over to Tristan so he can present the information and answer your questions you might have about it.
Okay. Hold up, Tristan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Whichever one was maybe this one might be that one. Yeah.
Sure. Motion. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for this presentation.
Welcome.
If you have any questions, I haven't been spending a lot of time on this yet, but I guarantee I can find some answers if I don't have them right now. So looking forward to the trip to San Antonio. Pretty straightforward. I put my own trip philosophy up here. I'm not sure if we've had one in the past that's been bounced around Spring Hill. But for my go-to for these kind of events, the musical experience is priority. They're in music classrooms, getting a music education, and music needs to be a focus of this trip. It's not just a vacation with your friends. It is a musical experience, and it's going to be a cultural building time with camaraderie of your peers and things like that. I know that I'm sure there's plenty of Spring Hill students that are well-traveled, and there might be some that are not. And I think it's a great opportunity to bring them all together and experience some new things all at once. So yeah, musical experience being priority number one, museums, things like that, working together, camaraderie. That's kind of what we're going for here. We don't know the date of the bowl game yet. That won't come out for the next few months when the NCAA decides. I think it would be smart not to leave on the 25th of December. So no matter what, we'll leave on the 26th of December. If it's on the 28th or 29th, they said that's usually the 2 dates that it's on. So that will determine whether it's a 3-night or a 2-night trip. Once we get those dates, I will get them out and get them to everybody. it's gonna be a 12-hour drive, which I'm really looking forward to. And the estimated cost, I think they pitched it, Mr. Williams, you might know, at $1,000, I think, a kid. So right now I whittled it down to about $940 if we can pull that off. And that breakdown is further in this PowerPoint as well. The itinerary is half already built by the trip company and the company that runs the Alamo Bowl band experience. So there's band things every day, just about. And then there's a little customization when it comes to activities and dinner and things like that. Day one is a travel day. Day two, I believe is our personal performance in a parade, things like that, celebrating the week, celebrating the teams, and some time spent on the Riverwalk. Day three is the rehearsal. And then all of those sightseeing opportunities were free, which I chose for that purpose, which really helps. And there's some good cultural relevance there that I think will be impactful in the state of Texas. And then day four is the game. So do lunch, things like that, and then go to the Alamo Bowl. Right now we got 87 students pay the deposit, and then we're on track for 12 chaperones. There's a package with the Trimp company that allows I think it's 2 free director packages per every 48 kids, something right around there. So we're right on track with that. In the past, I know it's been the band director and the assistant stipend holder, whoever that would be. And then since it's marching band, also taking the color guard instructor would be pretty important. So that's also built into some of the overall pricing as well. And then financial breakdown is right there in front of you. I am also planning the trip for my current school right now. And so with some bus information flowing through, I might have found a better option for busing. I know Aero's been used in the past, but I found, with everything being insane right now, I found a couple other options. One is a bus company called, I think it's called Crossroads. It's whoever buses the Chiefs, apparently, because they sent me a picture of Andy Reid. And the price for that, I mean, we were going to spend 13,000, I think, on that one, and it was down to like 9,000. So I'm going to keep looking into that. That would save us a pretty good chunk of change per kid. So the more information I get on that, the more I'll put into the presentation. Yeah, I think that's about as comprehensive as I have for this presentation. I've been in close contact with our trip contact as well. She's been really responsive, talked her on the phone a few times. So any questions that we need answered, she's been pretty good to go on that. So if you have any questions for me, happy to answer them.
I had a question. Do the bus companies, when you're going on that long of a trip, do they have 2 drivers per bus?
Yeah, often, at least in trips that I've hosted before, they'll have to trade off and things like that and count their hours and calculate hours and things like that. So oftentimes we've had to make changes depending on the distance and things like that, which will calculate in. So yeah, for sure.
So welcome to Spring Hill.
Thank you.
So I think the last time that the band took this trip, my husband went as a chaperone, and it was the longest bowl game in history. It went into 3 overtimes or something.
Can't wait.
So,
all right.
but I'm just very excited that we have a great new band director, and that this program can go forward, because a lot of people, this is their thing. So
Sure.
it's very great. So
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, you are correct. That was, I think they didn't leave the stadium till almost midnight, because my son was there too. So. Welcome. I'm glad you looked into the bus thing, because I saw that and went, whoa.
Yeah, we took a trip 2 years ago, I think. And buses were 8,000 about, which I thought was crazy then. And then everything's about 13,000, 14,000 now. So yeah, it's kind of wild, and fuel costs and everything, and all the expenditures have gone up. So.
Very good.
Any other questions?
No questions, just welcome. I'm excited to have, it's a little bittersweet. I don't know about you guys, but I have 2 band kids, and I think Mr. Woogie has been wonderful for my children. And so I'm excited to have you. I heard your speech at the performance last week, and I'm just really, really excited to keep the momentum going. So welcome.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you. Thank you for this. This is a great presentation. Breaks it down right, Brad. I like that you've got an experience. You've got a goal there.
Sure.
Or the focus. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Tristan.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, moving on to Edgenuity annual renewal.
This is not a new product we've used in years past. The difference that we placed it onto the discussion item was because in the past it was just a 1-year contract. This is an actual 3-year contract. And this is the platform that offers a lot of the credit recovery to our students. There's also some supplemental curriculum materials for general education classes that can be dialed into. The main thing about doing a 3-year agreement is you know that there's that prior years we paid $22,000 annually, just having year to year. I'm sorry, no, we paid $23,995. So it was $1,900. We paid $1,995 more doing it annually, but if we approve a 3-year agreement, that cost would drop from $23,995 down to $22,000. So you would save $1,995 a year. And then if you have any questions on the platform, like I said, we can try to answer those. But it's not a new concept, but it is going from an annual contract to a 3-year term.
Any questions? Saving money is good.
I had a question on what the EdgeX promotional access was. Is that just an add-on feature?
Yes, it's a 1 year. They're trying to get you to switch.
Okay. Cause it just said access not to exceed. So that's a 1 year. Okay, it's a 1 year trial.
Yeah, it's a 1 year.
I see.
It's a 1 year.
Any other questions or discussion?
Do you see any reason not to go with a 3-year deal? Is that the?
No, Dr. Smith and Mr. Williams and I spoke, and they don't anticipate any changes. It's primarily used for credit recovery, so.
Gotcha.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to our strategic plan review, Dr. Latrell.
And got a pretty good, I know y'all been waiting to hear what we've been doing on the strategic plan this year. I know that the district approved this time last year, it might have got the proposal about this time to finish up the draft that had been worked on prior to this school year. And once I started in July, I really felt there was a need for me during the Listen and Learn tour to incorporate perhaps thoughts, ideas, themes that were heard more than, 1 or 2 times into the strategic plan. Because one thing I had heard was that while they felt the content was good, they felt it could maybe be a little bit structured a little bit differently to make sure that it was easier for any reader to ascertain, okay, what particular goal might relate to facilities, what particular goal might relate to academic achievement, technology. And so that's what we've been kind of working on this year and have kind of also aligned it with some of our other terminology that we've used quite regularly across the district. And so this evening, we have Dr. Robinson and Dr. Villarreal, and if they need reinforcements, they've got some reinforcements in the back there as well that are going to help them. But the whole thing about this is last year when there was the foresight to make it. It was like a 7-year plan. It was from like 22 through 28. And that was done, I think, with the intention. They knew a new superintendent was coming in. They also knew that this was our last year with the 5th year of the KISA cycle. And next year we would be starting a 5-year cycle, which is what most school districts have, a 5-year cycle on their strategic plan. And so this also gets us to now with a 5-year cycle plan. And we're doing all of this under the guise of looking at each category, which they will explain. And then when we get through with our schools, we'll be looking at where have we been, where are we? But then from here on out, we're going to be looking at where do we want to be in 2028? So what's that going to look like stepwise, incrementally when we get to 2025? How are we going to get to where we want to be in 28? We have to take it one step at a time. And that's what each goal will be developing strategies and action plans about. And that is what we hope over the course of the next school year again, on a more regular basis, we will be bringing you information back as to telling you your strategies, active steps that are being deployed. And it'll probably be and they'll hit on this too, in about 12 to 15 months, we'll be ready to start bringing you in what's our progress in terms of what's been accomplished, what's still in progress, what maybe has not really even been took hold yet. So at this time, Dr. Robinson, you, Dr. Villarreal, and whoever you deem necessary to come on, and they will have an opportunity to have you ask questions as well later.
Well, good evening. It seems like we've already had a full meeting. So jumping into strategic plan at this point, we'll do the best we can to cover the information and to be as focused and brief as possible. But if there's things that we kind of gloss over that you've got questions about, please stop us and ask questions. Dr. Luttrell hit a little bit on kind of where this plan came out of, and a lot of his work with the Listen and Learn tour and the feedback we received from staff, from parents. You heard from some of the students earlier tonight that were part of that group. Coming in as somebody new, I would tell you the process part that you didn't get to see was probably as beneficial to me as the end product, is where we are, just in learning a lot about our system, learning a lot about the historical side of our district and where we've come from, and being able to try to connect all those things. So just explaining briefly the process, Dr. Luttrell hit on the Listen and Learn tour. There's a lot that we heard from that that wasn't represented in the strategic plan that we are currently operating from. And so if you think about our current strategic plan, and I'll show you the just snapshot of it in just a minute, it was very focused on academic achievement, very focused on student success and instruction, which is great. The problem is those things don't happen in isolation. They take a lot of other supports to really see growth in that one area. So one of the things that I like about the revision that you're going to start to see tonight is it's more comprehensive. It addresses some of those things out of Listen and Learn. It also, one of the pieces we heard from some of our other departments was, where do I tie in? Where do I connect my department plans? Where do I connect my goals, the things I'm working on, to the strategic plan? And it helps us do that as well. So we expanded the scope. We've been working for several months now with subcommittees made up predominantly of our administrative team, and having them go back to their building leadership teams and bring feedback. We started with a strategic plan outline that had 9 focus areas and close to 45 or 50 goals. Yeah, I can tell from your face, you had the same reaction we did. So we took that information back to our executive leadership team, which is predominantly our directors, and we pared it back. We tried not to lose content from what we had heard was important to our stakeholders, and yet tried to focus it a little bit more. And what you'll see tonight is a result of multiple revisions that went between our executive leadership team and our building principal team and back and forth. And so we'll be hitting pretty high level on the goals today, and I'll talk you through some of the next steps as we go. So if you remember, this is the strategic plan we've been working off of. I would tell you our buildings have plans built around these 3 projects. They're also projects that are highly connected to other work that we're doing in the district. So either KISA, you see real world learning pop up, which is something that we're working with Kauffman Foundation. We have a lot of commitment from some of our buildings around these 3 areas. We wanted to make sure that we didn't lose these 3 in the revision process, or that we created any chaos to what our buildings were already doing. So what you're going to see in the plan that we're working from tonight is this portion, or this plan, becomes the student success part of our new plan. It'll make more sense as we go, but we didn't remove content. Basically what we did is took it and focused it in one area, and the other 4 areas that you're going to hear about tonight are there to support us reaching still those goals. So our plan is built around 5 focus areas. These shouldn't look new to you because they're the core values that we started working around earlier this year. So we took the big goals, the big objectives that we were hearing from our teams, and we structured them around the 5 core values. We'll give you, again, kind of a high level overview tonight with the intention that we'll come back for multiple presentations later this year that'll go into more detail on some of the action steps. So one thing I did want to highlight, as we start writing out this plan and putting the details to it, we wanted to make sure that we had a structure that our team could stand behind. I think we were in multiple meetings and we called the same thing goals and objectives and strategies, and we used a lot of different terminology. So what you're going to hear tonight are the goals of this plan. So think big picture overarching. What we will come back in June and do with our administrative team is put the objectives to it. That'll be the measurable piece that will hold us accountable. It'll also help us celebrate as we see successes with our plan. So that'll be the next step that's coming. And then if you think the strategies and tactics will be the actual action steps that we'll develop, both as a full district team and within our buildings as they put their building plans together, will be those pieces. And that'll come more in the fall and into next school year. Questions about any of that? I know I'm talking fast, but all right. We'd like to share a little bit of the goals that have come out of our district leadership team's work. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Smith to kick us off.
Thank you. Good evening. The student success portion of the strategic plan is the portion of our plan that looks the most similar to what we presented last June to the Board of Education. So as Dr. Robinson mentioned, many of the goals that we had in the previous strategic plan, those remain the same under student success. This just is a list of individuals who have helped kind of shape those goals in our strategic plan. So under student success, we still have aims to focus on academic achievement. And as you know, with students in schools right now, they are finishing up spring assessments. They just completed their state assessments at the end of April. They're engaged with their FastBridge testing right now. So as our students wrap up those springtime assessments, we'll be able to look at growth and achievement throughout the academic year and analyze our results and determine next steps. We've been working on real-world learning, particularly with our Spring Hill High School students. We received a grant from the Kauffman Foundation for 3 years to work on real-world learning, and we shared an update with the Board of Education earlier this year on that process. We also recently welcomed Leah Good, who is currently our culinary arts teacher at the high school, as our new real-world learning coordinator. So we're excited to bring her on board and have her help facilitate the work of that grant moving forward. We've been working also on social emotional learning. So as you know, the elementary schools have been working on Leader in Me, and I believe our principals will be coming to a future Board of Education meeting to share their progress and process with Leader in Me work. Our middle school has been engaged with Habitudes, and our high school has been engaged with Renaissance RX and some curriculum developed by our counselors and teachers. So we're doing quite well with social emotional learning. And then we also have continued our efforts around MTSS. If you recall from the board meeting at Timber Sage Elementary earlier this year, the Timber Sage staff and their principal Mika Bauer outlined for you at the building level what the process of MTSS looks like for teachers and students. And so we're really excited about the systems and structures that have been put in place so that buildings can do the work of MTSS more effectively and help intervene when students might be struggling academically or when they need a little bit of additional enrichment or acceleration because they've already mastered some of those concepts. So MTSS remains a focus under student success. And then we continue to work to ensure that all of our students feel as though they are valued and have a sense of belonging here in Spring Hill schools. So as you see, these are goals that have just transferred from the previous strategic plan and now remain in the current one under the area of student success. Are there any questions I can answer about this portion of the plan? If not, I will turn it over to Dr. Villarreal to discuss engaged community.
I know you guys got excited just now seeing Aaron and I standing next to each other because you remember what a great show we put on in June for you when we talked about the strategic plan. But I'm happy to be here in front of you again to continue the work that we started last year on the strategic plan, specifically in the core value of engaged community. What you see on the screen there is the subcommittee of administrators that worked on assembling these goals and that will continue to work on identifying our objectives moving forward. We have 3 goals in the engaged community area. The first is working toward that shared responsibility among families, schools, and our community. And in that effort, we're going to be looking at doing a lot more two-way multimodal information sharing to make sure that it's not just us pushing out information, that our families and our community are part of the conversation. We're also going to be looking at, over the next 5 years, introducing some family education programming and support to help make sure that our families feel like they have the resources they need to help their students be successful in those areas under student success. The second goal is related specifically to community partnerships. And this one is a big one because, as you all know, our school district encompasses over 80 square miles of geographic area in the cities of Spring Hill, Olathe, Overland Park, and some unincorporated areas of Johnson County. So this is looking specifically at strengthening some of those community partnerships where in some cases we already have really strong partnerships, like with the Spring Hill Rec Commission or the Spring Hill Chamber, but then also expanding some of that into those other areas, looking at Johnson County Parks and Rec, the Olathe Chamber, the cities of Olathe, Overland Park, and Spring Hill, to just really bring together our entire district community. And the third goal is looking at strengthening the connection of all of our patrons to the school district and working to promote a feeling of unity throughout all of our schools. So those are our 3 goals for engaged community. And I can take any questions now. There is also a time for questions at the end. All right, next up is Ms. Michelle Hackney with World Class Staff.
Good evening. This is a great week to talk about world-class staff with our staff appreciation efforts. This is our group that met to talk about world-class staff. I think Dr. Villarreal would tell you that I had the most that wanted to sign up to talk about this. So as we know, that world-class staff is the foundation of our school. We're building our everything that we do based on the staff that we hire. Research tells us that student achievement is very directly correlated to the quality of instruction that students receive. So our goals for world-class staff, we're looking for addressing our staffing needs of the district and dealing with the projected growth. It's getting more and more challenging to plan and address for student needs through the projected growth, through finance. So we're working really hard to make sure that we're ahead of the game on that. Recruitment strategies and processes. It's not just going out to colleges anymore and having students lined up for miles to come work for us across the state. All of us are struggling to recruit staff and doing very creative things to attract top talent. We're continuing to brainstorm and work on that. And it's really important to have that recruitment piece as one of our goals. Employee retention. One of the keys to retaining employees is to helping them to grow, develop, and to learn themselves, and looking at multiple ways to do that. The vision for professional learning communities, that's one of the chief ways that we're helping our staff to grow, to talk about student achievement, what we're going to do to help our students learn. As I'm doing any sort of stay interview or exit interview, one of the big things that staff talks about is the importance of the professional learning communities. It's also been a very huge recruitment tool and an important reason for many staff members to come to us, because it's such an important part of teaching and learning. And then finally, the culture of continuous professional growth. Dr. Smith and her team, principals, are doing really great things to help our staff professionally grow, and it's one of the chief components of retaining effective staff. Okay.
Talk about that one too. No. Supportive environment. Tim Meek did a lot of the work in leading this one. This one you'll see it is a little bit broader than some of the others. but trying to find the right spot for our nutrition services, our maintenance and facility staff, our technology department. All of these are programs that currently have pretty comprehensive plans. What we've continued to hear from them throughout the process is we need to make sure our plans support student achievement. And so that'll be the work moving forward. You'll also see in supportive environment, the safety and security piece that we're doing a lot around right now with Strategics with their program coming in. Transparent leadership, this is the part really where the board gets involved in the strategic plan. You'll see some strategic plans refer to boardsmanship and outline steps that way. We chose to go this route because it pulled in a couple of different areas. We heard frequently on the Listen and Learn tour and continue to see the board do some of the work around long-term and short-term planning and making sure that not only are we meeting growth as far as facilities are concerned, but that our academic programming, our social emotional programming, our staffing, all of that is planning for that growth as well. There's also a piece of this that's about building your capacity. If we're coming to you asking for a change or for you to consider a change, that we're getting out in front of that and we're providing education to the board. There's a lot of conversation earlier tonight about where to get information and where to present questions. That'll be a piece that we can work through under transparent leadership, number 2. And then the last piece of this is just making sure that our decision-making, that there's a transparency piece to our ongoing decision-making, and that we're keeping things out in front of our stakeholders. We're getting feedback from our stakeholders, and that ultimately we're making timely decisions that keep the district set up well for success in the future. Do you have questions about any of the goals?
When you talk about capacity, that's a question. When I think of it in 2 terms. One is capability and the other is capacity. Capacity is the availability and time to commit and be dedicated to various things. Is that?
Well, I think
I'm struggling with the term capacity.
Yeah, when I'm thinking of it from a school leadership standpoint, anytime we want to move forward or make an improvement, whether that's at the district level or at the building level, you've got to create and for this conversation, we've got to create the board's readiness for that change to occur. And so if we show up and we present you with a new idea, but we've done nothing to plant the seed, provide you information, show you the impact of that change, I think that's what we're referring to from a capacity standpoint. There's, as fast as Spring Hill is growing, there are going to be things over the next 5 years that we have to change. There's going to be things within this plan that we have to change, and trying to stay out in front of those things and present the board with information so that you're ready to make those decisions and feel like you have the information you need to effectively make a decision, I think is what we're looking at from a capacity standpoint.
So it's a proactive education of potential upcoming decisions. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of on that vein, I think one of the things we've talked about as a board and kind of individual board members, especially at the conferences we go to and stuff, is about building trust. Mm-hmm. And if there's any way you could incorporate that into some of that language, because that's really so much what it's about, is if, any sometimes kind of aversion that you get from the board, it seems like it's like the trust issue is what's coming into play. And so it seems like from what we hear at these conferences is that really effective school districts have such a really good trust between the board and the staff. And that's what makes them function so well.
I think it's trust at multiple levels. It's trust that staff trust administration, the board trusts administration, the board trusts the superintendent, and all of that takes a different level of work to build. So we can look at how we can incorporate that in.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because it triggered one of the sessions I was at in the conference in Orlando here a few weeks ago. Is they made the comment, it's that old Stephen Covey comment about action happens at the speed of trust. And so I think it's a very appropriate comment, and thank you for reminding me, Sharon. But I thought it was, when they said that, it set off a trigger in my mind and said I really believe that. I think that's an accurate statement, but so I think it's really critical that we think about what there's 7 or 8 components of trust and how that gets built into plans for future decisions. Which I think ties directly to the goal of building capacity of the Board of Education.
Absolutely. You know, I've always worked from the standpoint that you move as fast as possible, but as slowly as necessary. And it often takes that building that trust piece to be able to, and going slow at the beginning to build it up. Hopefully will help us as we get to the back end of our 5-year plan here, moving a little bit quicker.
Yeah, slow is smooth and smooth is fast kind of thing, right?
I think one of the other things that would kind of help me, I don't want to speak for everybody, to kind of wrap my head around the change from one strategic plan to the next is to maybe do something where we could look at them side by side. And like the student success piece, if that's pretty much the whole plan, was there anything else that was tweaked or changed about that?
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the things we've been discussing a lot. If you think from a teacher perspective, because that's the group we want to make sure with a plan that we're providing stability and that, you know, they don't think every year I come back in August and I get presented with a new plan. If you think about the part of this plan though, that they're going to stay focused on, it's still that student success component. Like 90% of what your buildings are going to do at the building level is going to be driven by that student success piece. So we can look at how we present that information, whether that's a new teacher orientation or in our back to school, and look at some kind of crosswalk where we can show the consistency between the two.
Thank you. And thank you for all your work on this because seems like it's extremely.
I will share just briefly next steps so you can see where we're going with this. And I'll do it very quickly just because of the sake of time. We talked a little bit about coming back in June with, and that's not to you all in June, that'll be working June 6th and 7th. We have our administrative team with 2 mornings working together. All of our new administrators will be here as well for that. And so it'll be a good opportunity for us to start putting some measurable components to this, hoping that we could bring that back to the board in the fall. The other piece here is there's a direct tie into KESA. A lot of, assuming the KESA process stays somewhat consistent, a lot of this coming year for KESA would be the start of our new cycle. So it'd be collecting baseline data and kind of establishing our goals. So if you think of it from that perspective, we'll be doing a lot of that. And probably a lot of the presentations you will hear throughout the year, the updates that come, will be us putting more of the action steps and sharing where we're going in the short term, and also sharing new data that we're collecting to kind of establish that baseline. There's going to be some areas of the plan that we don't have clear data and we'll have to collect it in this first year. So Dr. Luttrell mentioned in his notes to the board, we're expecting this to be something you're going to hear about a lot next year. And so you'll hear there are some nice tie-ins. So if I think about like Dr. Smith doing a fall presentation on data, there's a clear connection to the student success piece. So it may very well be that as part of that presentation, she can hit on the other parts of student success rather than the board having to outline a whole separate time for those kind of things. When Mrs. Hackney does spring hiring, there's some places where, again, we could present on that world-class staff component and tie that in. So we'll do the best we can to tie parts of the plan into things we're already doing. The other part that you won't see is these goals that have been established will also be driving the work of our administrative team with our monthly meetings. So hopefully our work is being spent on things that directly connect to the goals within our strategic plan. We did put the KESA timeline in, just if you want to take a look. We are expecting some changes to KESA next year. Right now, we're anticipating that our cycle will stay the same. But as with everything with KSDE, we'll learn more about that next year when they roll out the new process. So that's all I have. But if you've got questions, either hopefully I can answer them or members of our team.
Will every goal have a measurement associated with key performance indicator? And one of the themes at the conference at school board or National School Board Conference was always inspect what you expect. And so it's key that we keep that 3-word phrase in mind, because if we set an expectation and we aren't measuring progress towards it, why do we have the expectation, right? So that's.
So we haven't put clear numbers to it yet, but I would tell you, just as we went through the work that our subcommittees have done, some of them in their discussion time got well into starting to write objectives. Some of them, the action steps started to formulate. So I think one of the things we'll have to be conscious of is this plan still has 23 or 24 goals to it. So trying to look for measures that we have throughout the district that may be able to show progress in multiple areas may be important, just so that from an administrative standpoint, we can kind of focus our efforts and really see success, or that our plan's not where it needs to be. I think that's one of the things you're really seeing with school improvement processes, is that it's a living document that you'll continue to make minor adjustments to over time, rather than setting it at the beginning and just sticking with it, even if it's not having the results that you'd want it to.
Having the agility, and then, and just the looking at the student excellence, right? Student achievement. That's a lagging indicator. That's after the fact. And so having a clear insight into what those leading indicators are, we know that if we take care of these leading indicators, that student excellence is the achievement's gonna take care of itself. It's a lagging indicator. So
well, not taking us too far down the road, or just stealing Dr. Smith's thunder for later on, but measuring student success with the measures we have is going to be a big discussion with our team, because you're going to see during the cycle, you'll see a new state assessment developed and rolled out. So if we use that as our only indicator, we're likely going to see our data significantly change in 2 years, 2025. I knew it was coming up. We put a lot of work into FastBridge, which shows success in some ways, but I think there's got to be a conversation of, is it the primary measure we want to use? Do we want to use it the way we're currently doing it, or is there a better way? So I think it's going to be a fun conversation, and probably one that we'll need to get some other stakeholders involved. But that's kind of the fun of school improvement too, is we've got lots and lots of data at our fingertips. How do we utilize it to really make sure we're improving our whole district?
Right.
So I have a couple questions. I have the one that was rolled out from June last year, and the goals are very similar, and what you're showing as far as steps is very similar to what pretty much right on. But it sounds like what we're measuring is going to change. Is that?
It could. Some of those that the goals moved from one to the other. I think part of what Dr. Smith and her team will need to do is to look at the data that we were already utilizing and see, does it still have application? Is it still the right data for us to use? A lot of the other areas that weren't in the plan, there were no measurable objectives at this point. So that's the work we'll be doing in June.
Like the world-class staff, and there's a couple of them that I noticed.
The nice thing is, like, world-class staff is one of them that I know we've talked from the very beginning about. Our human resources team having a well-defined department plan. So whether we've put measures in front of the board or we have measures behind the scenes that they're already utilizing, we should have some things to be able to draw from and say, this is how we've been measuring success. Is it still the right tool for us to use on a larger scale? Go ahead.
I just thought I would comment that my department and our district curriculum teams have had some discussions about other data points in addition to FastBridge that we may want to include as measures to share as part of the strategic plan updates. So those things could include the state assessment data that we do review in the fall. It could also include ACT data, because we want to look and track how our students are performing on ACT, how our students are performing on our AP exams. And then also our teams have been working on those assessments that they're giving as part of classroom instruction. So how do we know in a timely manner how our students are performing so that we can address any misconceptions or issues with their content before that grade level or that course concludes. So I think there, like Dr. Owen said, there's an exciting opportunity to expand some of the data that we're going to be looking at in regards to student success.
So I think, and this question probably is this very common to reevaluate and look at different data and how we're reporting it, like within a year and a half of us rolling out a new plan? Is that pretty common?
It's gonna depend. I mean, I think the unique circumstance here was that the plan was approved right at the time you had a new superintendent coming in. And had I been here through the whole time, we probably could have maybe not had that time to readjust, but I just felt that was important from what I was hearing, that we needed to maybe reroute some things and still keep the shell of what we had.
I think just in the 10 years that I've been sitting up here, just our access to data. I mean, there's just so many things that have progressed in the whole strategic planning concept that I think our plans are much more detailed and there's much more data available to regroup and to look forward. I mean, think about 10 years ago, I mean, it just seems like every year there's more things that we can pull from and more data points and stuff.
So then my second question is you guys had stated that we have lots of data at our fingertips. As we change can we look at prior years just like this, starting all the way back? So whatever data point we're using, can we use 21, 22 also in that and have that? It's really hard to see growth and see trends and see if we're moving up or down if every 2 years or year and a half we change those points. We only get this much view of what's actually happening. So is that possible?
It is possible. So the data points that we could continue to look back historically would be our ACT scores, our state assessment scores. We are able to look back at last year's FastBridge data, although FastBridge was in its initial year last year. But prior to that, we had used NWA MAP as our universal screener. So we have had a long period of time with universal screening data. So we are able to look back historically to see where our performance has been to determine how we're doing academically moving forward.
The one caution I would put there may be some areas we don't want to go too far back. I'll use world-class staff, for example. We know in the last 2 years that the market has drastically changed. So we can go, I mean, I have no doubt they have the data. We can go back and look at it. We can share it with the board. But is it really going to show the same picture as the market we're in currently? Or do we use next year's data as baseline data and look for growth moving forward? Those are things we're going to have to look at each individual area and make a determination about. I hear where you're going with it, and I understand that if we have the data and it's the same data, we'd want to see, what kind of progress have we had over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and where do we go over the course of the plan? There is going to be some data though that may not have the same level of application now, pulling in the historical pieces.
I want to go back to what Dr. Robinson shared with you at the beginning of the presentation, because I think it might provide a little bit of clarification on this. So what we shared with you today are those goals. And the point of the goals is to answer the question, what are we trying to achieve? What we're going to work on in June is establishing our objectives, which are those measurable targets. So earlier, Mr. Updike, you said, are we going to have things that we're measuring, those leading and lagging measures that we did present to you last year for the goals that we had written? That's our plan, is to establish those objectives this summer. So then we can come back to you in the fall and say, here's how we're going to measure each of our goals. And we want to establish baseline data next year, because the next 2 steps of this inverted triangle are strategies and tactics. And what we want to know is, are these new strategies and tactics that we are employing working? So we'll take next year's baseline data and then start applying our strategies and tactics and look at the data in the following years to see if what we're doing is working. Because we will have new strategies and tactics for each of those areas related to each of those goals that will hopefully impact our trending data over the next 5 years.
I understand that. And I feel like that's exactly where I'm going, but But if we're not looking, like this is 21, 22 data. So if we, in the meantime, don't have anything, I feel like we have 2 lost years of data that we're not doing anything with. So we have, well, this is only goes to spring of 22, so maybe just 1 year, but then next year will be our baseline. So then we're just starting again at 0.1, and we have to have a whole year to see what we did that year and then during the second year. So it's almost like we're starting over 2 years into our plan.
As Dr. Smith said, the student success area is different
Oh, okay.
because
okay.
it was part of the previous plan.
Okay.
And we've collected data on that last year and this year.
Okay.
It's the other 4 areas where we're not really going to be looking at prior year's data.
Okay,
We're
perfect.
gonna be moving forward.
Yes, thank you.
So
Thank you,
I
Kristen.
think we've pulled you down into objectives and data and you were trying to stay up at goals. And so I think that's the point. But I think all of these data discussions have to be had. I think how you segment the data is an important question to ask. If we look at, it's not always an annual look, right? It might be a semester look or a quarter look or whatever it might be. So I think it's important to understand that data very clearly as it ties into our metrics. So looking forward to the metric discussion or the objectives discussion. Any other questions or comments? Nicole, did you have another question? I thought you had 3. Oh, I thought you said you had 3 questions. Maybe I misheard you.
No, I think they answered. I thank you for the clarification on the academic, the student portion of it will remain the same. So that's awesome.
And this is only the beginning, so there'll be lots of opportunities to ask.
And it sounds
additional
like
questions.
you'll be presenting it quarterly.
At least.
At least, yeah.
I like it.
I think that's one of the things we pulled back from the National School Board Conference was having a scheduled cadence to our updates on strategic plans. So good job. Thank you. Any other final questions? Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Moving on to Board of Education member reports.
I very successfully came an hour late to the middle school site council meeting today, so I missed it. So I'm not sure what was discussed. In all transparency.
I've got a report. We've got a deadline at the Johnson County Election Office of June 1 for 4 of our board member positions that will be up. If you don't file by June 1, then that position will be open. So just be conscious, less than a month.
I did look today and there were no filings.
There's hardly anyone filed across the whole county. I mean, in most districts, it's. Concerning.
Thank you for the reminder, Candy. Moving on to superintendent report, Dr. Luttrell.
Yes, just a few items. Kansas legislative session is is complete. The current year funding that we were interested in did make it to the finish line. I don't know for sure if the governor has signed the whole budget bill yet, but all indications point that she will. That also portion of the education budget does include the base state aid per pupil increase, which will also be a benefit. The special education legislation, which was one in full funding there as of now, and I don't really see it changing much. The part that passed in the budget calls for a $7.5 million increase this next fiscal year, and then a following fiscal year in 25, another $7.5 million increase, which in the grand scheme of things, as Doug Swin would say, that really doesn't even put a dent in the shortfall that's already there. But we'll see. But the big one, current year funding and the base state aid right now, if those follow through, and I have no indication that they're not, should going to be a big help to USD 230. I do want to thank all of you, especially many of you really helped behind the scenes with that and working with our legislators. I do want to, like I said, Representative Adam Thomas was tremendous, terrific. And then, like I said, many of you, Director Sealing, many of you, Nicole, people that went to the Capitol, did a lot of lobbying behind the scenes as well. And I appreciate all that because it did take a whole team to make that happen. We are in the process of continuing to develop protocols and processes for, how the late start Wednesdays, with everybody being the 1 hour late start on Wednesdays, what that will look like in terms of drop off and different things. And we hope to have those released in public, and we'll bring them to you all first. We hope to have those in mid to late July, have those rolled out, ready to go. We're working with the Y to see what they can help, might be able to assist with, and bringing some people to the table to make sure that we come up with some options that will probably even be probably the next, before the end of the school year. Our goal is to send some type of a brief, very brief survey out to parents, just kind of seeing how many would be looking at maybe needing to take advantage of an earlier drop off. But we're on that and staying on top of that. The
I have a question
graduation.
on that, sir. Hold on 1 second. Did you say that for late start Wednesdays, you're hoping to bring the YMCA information late July?
No, we're working with them now.
You are,
To
okay.
try to get some on ways that they might be able to either assist our efforts or not, and some costs if we were. But yeah, so I mean, hopefully, we still got 2 meetings in June, and we plan to share some of that inside out.
Okay,
as well.
I feel like we need to get that to parents as soon as possible, because just if it comes to late July, that's 2 weeks for them to plan daycare or alternatives for their kids.
Then we have the graduations coming up. This Saturday, the 13th, is the Insight K-12 Stride KBA one, both inside the gymnasium. And then the high school class of 2023 USD230 Spring Hill class, it's Saturday the 20th, and that's in the AM. And again, if you are attending and are able to attend, again, please RSVP if you haven't already done so to Mrs. Henderson or Candy, and make sure that we know of your attendance. We can plan appropriately. The final student attendance day is set for the 25th. It's going to be around just 2 weeks from this Thursday. So I think after today, we had right at around 13 attendance days left for students. And then we're celebrating throughout this entire week, Staff Appreciation Week. Many of you are taking part in that. We're going to 2 different buildings per day, and just telling staff how much they're appreciated for all the work that they do, and giving them a small token of appreciation on behalf of the district. We went to the high school, Mr. Elliott and Dr. Robinson, Ms. Hackney this morning, and then we went to Wolf Creek this afternoon. And again, you can just tell, even though it's a small token staff, everybody likes being told, job well done and appreciation. So that's fun, and we'll continue doing that throughout the rest of the week. That's my superintendent's report.
Well, I hope the governor signs the current year funding bill. She's on a veto frenzy. I believe she vetoed 6 bipartisan bills 2 weeks ago. Was it more than that? Yeah, so hopefully she'll sign it.
Who have you heard from as far as attending, board members attending graduation?
We have not.
Let's do that. Let's take care of that right now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I won't be there for Insight, but I will be.
Just 2 then for high school?
Yeah, I will be at high school.
Brent, I'll be there.
I'll be at both.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
I'll be at both Insight and high school.
Keith, were you trying to say something?
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I will be at the high school.
Anybody else for insight? Other than Mr. Updike?
I think
No.
we're going to be
No.
out of town, but if something changes, I'll email you and let you know.
I would love to go, but I have a wedding to go to.
That's acceptable.
Yeah.
Is
Kenny, I don't know if you heard.
Insights at 10? Is that correct?
Oh,
What was, I'm sorry, Keith, I didn't hear you. What was?
Well, Insights at 10, is that correct?
No.
It's at 2.
2.
2
Okay,
p.m.
yes, I won't be able to be at that.
Okay.
I'll be at both the Insight and the high school graduation.
Is that everyone? You have all you need now, Rachel? High school. I think you might be out of town.
I might be out of town for
Said if it
Insight.
changes.
If something changes by the end of the week, we're trying to kind of figure it out with family, so I'll let you know.
Good. Anything else? All right, good. Moving on, we do need an executive session this evening.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss confidential student information pursuant to the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under coma. Those to be in this session include Board of Education members, superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of schools, and administrators and guests as requested. The executive session to begin at 9:10 and resuming no later than 9:30 in this place.
Second.
So it's seconded to move it to executive session to discuss confidential student information pursuant to the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under coma. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Milius,
Yes.
Mr. Ewing,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
approved.
very good. Thank you.
4 minutes.
Yes. Fresh.
9:40. I'll give us 15. I moved, maybe we have a second. Second. Nicole. Nine.
Who's out here? Okay.
Ellis, Nicole, stuff, Sharon.
Okay.
We're back in session and we do need another executive session.
Okay, hold on. Okay, Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual or individuals under coma. Those to be in session include Board of Education members, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and administrators as requested. The executive session will begin at 9:45, and will resume no later than 10:15 in this place.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel under coma. Rachel, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Milius? Mr. Ewing? Okay. Mrs. Sealing?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Approved.
Very good. Thank you.
To 10:45. No later than 10:45. Second, is there a second?
Second.
Mel seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're at 5, 6.
Okay, back in session.
Yep. Mr. President, I move that the board approves supplemental and extra duty assignments as recommended.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded to approve supplemental activities as recommended. Rachel, please collect a vote.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Milius, no. Approved. Yes.
We are adjourned.